might not suck this year.
This is the Baseball Hour with Tony Maz.
Me.
Presented by Bigelow Tea, Jackson Lumber, Blue Moonlight, Wellesley Testosterone, FindMassMoney.com, and by Golf. On Boston's home for sports. 98.5, the Sports Hub.
And a pop-up into left field. Duran coming in, kind of fitting that he will put this away. He does, as he had a terrific series here. And the Red Sox wind up taking 2 of the 3 here in Cleveland. They knock off the Guardians 13-3.
Yeah, just an offensive explosion. Kind of been waiting to see this again. 15 hits, 5 walks, just 7 strikeouts as a team. But go back to Brian Mayo for a sec, right? He made a big adjustment after a tough first inning. He really settled in. There's a lot of positives to take away from his outing. The bullpen went to work. Jaron Duran, 4 hits. Rafael, 5 runs driven in. Great day by the Boston Red Sox.
Great day for the Red Sox, says Will Middlebrooks. I suppose that's true. I would say all in all, pretty good weekend for the Red Sox. They bounced back nicely from a loss on Saturday in the opener of that doubleheader. Could have been a sweep, if you ask me, had they won that game, obviously, and it was a winnable game, but we'll get to that momentarily. 617-779-0985 is your number here on the Baseball Hour. There are a bunch of things I want to get to from this series. Jaron Duran on the field and off. The steal of home, the incident near the dugout, we'll get to that. Rafael Devers, his numbers here early in the season, he woke up a little in Cleveland, but as I discussed with Tyler Milliken on Friday, some eye-popping numbers as it pertains to Rafael Devers, and not in a good way. Trevor Story, who's been slumping at the plate. The defense is something everybody celebrates with Story. There was a play at the end of the first game of that doubleheader, or I should say in the 6th inning, that led to the decisive run in the game that I think Trevor Story reacted to passively, and it makes sense. We'll get to that. But let me start with this. Red Sox win 13-3 yesterday. They are now 9-0 this season when they get 10 hits or more. Now, look, if you're looking for a reason the Red Sox are 500, this is one of them. And let me explain to you what the stat is. I know what your answer is going to be, and then let me tell you why I think it is relevant. So again, the Red Sox are 9-0 when they get 10 or more hits. When they get fewer than 10, they are 7-14. Now, Jimmy Stewart, in and of itself, when I give you those 2 records, again, 9-0 when they have 10 or more hits, 7-14 when they have fewer than 10. Wouldn't you argue that most teams in Major League Baseball are going to win games when they get 10 hits, and they're not going to win them when they get fewer than 10?
Yes.
Okay, as would I. So on the surface, but see, I predicted this. On the surface, you would look at a statistic like that, and you would say, yeah, Maz, that's everybody. And it is. So the question isn't, the important part is not the stat itself. It's where you rank relative to other teams in that stat. To me, again, I always think that's the biggest thing. It's not the stat, it's the ranking. It's always the ranking. So when the Red Sox get 10 or more hits, they're unbeaten. You know where that ranks in Major League Baseball? First. The team that's tied with them is the Cleveland Indians, who are also 9-0. So the first part of it tells you it's not that most teams win when they get 10 or more hits. It's that the Red Sox win more than anybody. That's the stat. The 7-14 when they get fewer than 10 hits, that ranks 21st out of the 30 major league teams. They're in the bottom 10. This is a long way of me saying that the Red Sox still have not figured out a way to win when they're not slamming the ball all over the ballpark. To me, that is really the lesson in this. And that speaks to winning games in other ways and their inability to do it. They can't really pitch to wins. They can't play defense and run the bases to wins, although running the bases is certainly part of those offensive outbursts. But you follow me here. If it's a tight game that requires situational hitting, moving runners over, doing things like that, the Red Sox aren't very good at it. if they start slamming the ball all over the ballpark, not only will they win, they'll do that better than anybody in the game. So I didn't examine, I could have done this further, how many times the Red Sox have scored 10 or more runs this year or lost in games in which they've allowed 10, but it feels like a lot. They lost a game to the White Sox 11-1. They lost a game to Tampa Bay 16-1. They scored 18 runs, I think it was, against the Cardinals. They scored 13 runs yesterday. They had another game in there where I think they got 12 or 13. So you get the idea. They've only played, almost 30 games now on the season. I think it's just under, or is it exactly 30 games that the Red Sox have played here in the early part of the season? 16-14 is their record. And basically 1/6 of those, almost once a week, there's a game in which somebody scores a double figures in runs, whether it's the Red Sox or not. The competitive games, the Red Sox are usually losing those, the close games. And just to give you an idea, again, that this stat is not the same for everybody in baseball. The best teams in the game, or the teams that have been best at winning when they don't get 10 hits, are the New York Mets, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants, and the Detroit Tigers. Those teams, the Mets are 14-8 when they get fewer than 10 hits in a game. The Dodgers are 13-8. The Giants are 13-9. The Tigers are 10-8. Those four teams have the best records in baseball. The point being, they don't win only when they hit. They win in other ways too. They hit enough to win, but they also pitch. They play defense. They do the little things. Fundamentally, they are more sound. That is the thing we have yet to see consistently from the Red Sox. The outbursts have come sporadically with the offense, and when they have burst, they've burst in a royal way. They slam the ball all over the ballpark. But the inconsistency in the way they play is why they are 16-14 overall and really just been hovering around 500 all season long. So that's where we'll start, 617-779-0985. We'll take your calls. I do want to get to Duran. I want to get to Devers. I want to get to Story in particular, and anything else that is on your mind here in this baseball season. So we'll kick it off tonight with Rico, who's in Springfield and wants to talk about Alex Cora. Go ahead, Rico.
Hey, Tony, I was watching the Netflix doc, and I saw that Cora mentioned that the fans want the Red Sox to be great again. With my son now watching the Red Sox more and more, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with our manager so openly supporting the current administration. Your thoughts on this?
Okay. Is this a political wise-ass question? Is that the deal, Jimmy?
It feels like it.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think there were any political overtones when Cora made the comment.
Yeah. Sean's in Colorado. Sean, go ahead.
Hey, I originally said I want to talk about Roman Anthony, but scrap that. I wanted to talk about the importance of tomorrow's game with Crochet on the mound. Look, Houck's been atrocious, and Giolito hasn't been much better in his rehab outings. I think there's a massive emphasis on tomorrow's game. They need to perform well, and if they're going to win a close pitching game, it's got to be that one, because I think the bats are going to have to come alive for Houck and Giolito. And on top of that, I don't know why we're still seeing – I mean, I guess we're seeing – Giolito for the first time, great. But Houck, I feel like we got to start looking for other options, like the Dobbins kid. I thought he was pretty good when he came up, and they're moving on from Newcomb, which is what seems needs to be. But I think the pitching right now really needs to lean on Crochet tomorrow, especially.
Yeah, Sean, and obviously they lost the last one that Crochet pitched, and to me, again, it's a bit of a worrisome thing. You can't lose the game when Crochet pitches, especially when if they're going through stretches where they're not scoring runs. So that puts a really undue amount of stress on Crochet every time he takes the mound, as does the ineffectiveness of Tanner Houck. So Walker Buehler has been better. Certainly, it was a rough start. First couple of games weren't that great. He's been better since then. That has certainly helped. Bayo has been, I would say, okay. Certainly, this one was better than the first one. But to me, the inability to rely on the starting pitching is a big part of the problem. So they have only been able to win, even in some of these games where they've won and gotten all these hits, they end up giving up 5, 6, 7 runs, and they've needed to score into double digits to be comfortably ahead. Cora yesterday against the Indians had Garrett Whitlock up with the intention of having him go 2 innings when they were up, 8-3 at that time. They blew the game open on the Rafael home run and then stretched the lead further. But otherwise, 8-3, he felt wasn't safe. Now, I know they had an off day, and if he got Whitlock up, he was going to use him for 2 innings. He might as well use him with a day off coming today. But you get the idea. There's no guarantee that they're going to nail these games down unless they open up leads of 7-8 runs. So there have been some nights where the pitching has been pretty good, but just not enough of them. And I still have my concerns about the defense. So 617-779-0985. Jaron Duran had a very interesting weekend. We'll tell you about the steal of home, the value of the steal of home. Because if you remember, and some of you do, some of you don't, when Jacoby Ellsbury stole home against Andy Pettitte and the Yankees, which, by the way, I think was 9 years to the day. Jimmy Stewart, is that right?
That sounds right, yeah.
It was on the same day that this one was, April 26th, which to me is an oddity. But the Jaron Duran steal of home and then the incident yesterday, as well as your thoughts and calls on everything else regarding the Red Sox when we come back in the baseball hour.
19 last year. He's coming home. Here's the throw. He is safe. A stolen base. He steals home. Jared Duran steals home. It is 6-0. Well, the lefty, they always have to be aware with a guy with that kind of speed at third.
Straight steal of home. Pitcher on the mound goes into his windup. Duran bolts for the plate, dives in. Rafael Devers saw it coming. Left-handed batter at the box. Devers backed up, basically put his arms up, let Duran dive right in there, and he got his hand in just under the tag. Now, you've heard me say this sort of thing in the past when Jacoby Ellsbury did this years ago with Andy Pettitte on the mound. Jimmy Stewart, if I remember right, wasn't it a Sunday night game against the Yankees?
It was.
Okay, it was a Sunday night game. I know for sure it was the Yankees. It was Andy Pettitte on the mound, as was the case then. This was also a left-handed pitcher. I can't pronounce the guy's name. Doug Nikhazy, I think it is, or Nikhazy. On the mound for the Indians, left-hander.
Guardians.
I'm sorry. Guardians. Thank you, Jimmy. And Duran had just hit a triple into the right field corner. Let me just say this, that the Red Sox did almost everything right on this play, as you have to execute a straight steal of home and make it work. And when I say they did everything right on this play, let me elaborate. First of all, they were up 5-0. So there was no risk in stealing home, trying a straight steal of home. That's number one. Number two, when Duran got to third base, the pitcher notified the umpire that he was going to be pitching from the windup. Once he did that, Duran and the third base coach got together and said, well, look, if there's an opportunity, think about it. So apparently against Seattle last week at Fenway Park, Duran was halfway down the line when the pitcher was on the mound and in his delivery. So, again, when you have that kind of speed and you're that kind of base runner, you might be able to execute it. And listen, I've never said anything about Jared Duran being a bad base runner. He can outright fly. He can move. Lots of guys hit the ball into the corner and are settling for two the moment they get out of the box. Duran's thinking three. He had 14 triples last year. So he's thinking three out of the box, and when he gets on third, he's thinking about stealing home. So the pitcher made a stupid mistake to tell the world he was going to pitch from the windup. And then again, because he's left-handed, once he starts, his back is to Duran. Duran, aside from being fast, accelerates extremely quickly. He gets to top speed very fast and makes the steal a home. Now, if you listen to the program way back then, when Ellsbury stole home, I remember what I said. It's a cute play. It's a fun play. And many of you will talk about it for 10 years and you won't see him do it again. And I would say the chances are very similar with Duran. It may never happen again. So as much as you like it, it doesn't have that much value. And when I say that, and I like it too, by the way, I like the entertainment part of it. I like the athleticism of it. And frankly, I just like the daring nature of it. So I've seen it 3 times in my life watching the Red Sox. This one, Ellsbury, and Billy Hatcher stole one many years ago. Jimmy, do you remember him?
93, 94, somewhere around that time. I love Billy Hatcher. It's my favorite steal of home.
So Billy Hatcher was an outfielder who played with the Red Sox toward the end of his career. Jimmy's right. It was under Butch Hobson. And if you were to go back and look, Billy Hatcher, I think at one point in the 1990 World Series that the Reds won against the Oakland A's, Hatcher was an outfielder for the Reds on that championship team. I think Hatcher had something like 6, 7, or 8 straight hits over a span of a couple of games.
He was the World Series MVP and the Reds sweeping the A's.
Okay, and Jimmy, does it say there how many hits in a row he had in the series?
I just knew that off the top of my head.
They couldn't get him out. They couldn't get him out. He was amazing in that World Series.
He also crushed it for the Astros in the 86 NLCS.
Yeah, and, look, he was a fun player to watch, Billy Hatcher was it. And Billy Hatcher, when he stole home, if I'm not mistaken, slid in with his feet first. Both Ellsbury and Jaron Duran went in head first and were able to get their hand in before the tag. But Billy Hatcher was able to do it feet first. Anyway.
Hatcher was 9 for 12 in the World Series sweep of the Reds against the A's.
Yeah, they couldn't get him out. And again, Jimmy, I want to say like 7 or 8 of those hits were in a row. Like it was only a 4-game series. He was amazing in that World Series.
4 doubles, a triple, 2 RBIs.
Yeah. So anyway, but the point being this. Nobody in their right mind would ever try that in a 1-0 game, a 3-2 game, a 5-4 game, because the risk is too high. So the Red Sox got the score right, they got the situation right, and then Jaron Duran executed it flawlessly. Okay, flawlessly. So, but fun play to watch. And, Duran obviously had an interesting weekend during the 7th inning stretch yesterday. And I'll just add, if you have thoughts on it, by all means, but was standing in front of the dugout when a fan from behind the visiting dugout in Cleveland, and in Cleveland, the visiting dugout is on the first base side. A fan made a comment about Jaron Duran's contemplating suicide, as he admitted in the documentary, The Clubhouse, that has been airing on Netflix. And many of the Red Sox, rightfully so, lost it. Sadly, I've also seen this happen before. Years ago, the Red Sox had a pitcher named Frank Castillo, who was kind of a junk baller, curveball, didn't throw really over 90 miles an hour, was returning to the dugout one night at Fenway Park, and a fan started yelling at him, and Castillo lost his mind. After the game, I asked him about it, and it was a similar kind of exchange. And there is nothing that will get uniformed personnel to react as angrily toward the fan base as that particular comment or something close to it. And to their credit, the Red Sox stood by Duran in this. The fan was ejected from the ballpark. And to me, this is one of those cases where I'd seriously consider never letting that person into a game again, or at least for a substantial period of time. We saw something like this fan behavior during the World Series last year, where a fan grabbed Mookie Betts' hand at Yankee Stadium or his wrist, and those fans were ejected from the ballpark, lost all post-season tickets. And I think, Jimmy, didn't they have their season tickets revoked for the season?
I believe that's true.
For this year. Something like that. So just really horrible fan behavior in Cleveland over the weekend. Steve's in Fall River. Steve, what do you got?
Boy, Tony, I've been hearing about this thing with Jaron Duran, and I think of poor Jim Eisenreich, who had Tourette's. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, sure, I remember Eisenreich. Yep, I do.
They started him twitching, and then, oh, my God, he couldn't play anymore. He got to the point where people figured it out. I mean, believe it or not, people were worse back in the day. If you read about it, he couldn't play. He had to leave the big team.
Yeah, Eisenreich he was a pretty good hitter, Steve, too. But what do you got on the Red Sox?
I always am amused at the first 10 games, and we try to make all these prognostications on 10 games, and now we've got April almost to a close. I like your stat, but I wish you'd finish it at the end of the month and then tell us at the end of May how they're trending. And then maybe we'll start to see a pattern. I don't think we can draw big conclusions on 30 games. I think we have to need more body of work. I would start to get worried at the end of June, actually. I won't even say it's 2 months. I'd wait till the end of June.
So, Steve, thank you for the call. The old adage in baseball is 2 months to evaluate, 2 months to fix, 2 months to make a run at the playoffs. So Memorial Day was always a good cutoff. You get to the end of May. It used to be 6 weeks. Years and years ago, they'd say 6 weeks are a pretty good litmus or a pretty good sample size, good litmus test. Then when Moneyball sort of became the rage, it became more like 2 months, so 8 weeks. Unfortunately, I'm not going to wait for 8 weeks to make any sort of judgments on the Red Sox. Again, as we say, from 2 to 6 every day, I have a show to do today. So you don't have to put a lot of stock in it if you don't want. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is that When the Red Sox don't belt the ball all over the ballpark and get 10 hits, they've been one of the worst teams in baseball. And I think this is consistent, by the way, with what you see. So some nights, all you see is strikeouts. They don't put the ball in play. They don't generate runs. They don't generate offense or manufacture runs. They don't do any of that. And their situational hitting has largely been garbage. You know what I would love to see is what their stats are, runners in scoring position in those games that they won big, and then what they are in the majority of games. Because I would still tell you that situationally, they're not a good hitting team. For example, the home run that Ceddanne Rafaela hit yesterday when they were already up 8-3 or 9-3 or whatever it was, that goes down as a hit with runners in scoring position. It was a 3-run homer. But is it really? It was an 8-3 game. There's no pressure on that hit. So I would love to know what they are with 2 outs and runners in scoring position or runners in scoring position in general in games that are within 2 runs either way. Because I bet you that in those games, they are atrocious. And my explanation for it would be that they have undisciplined hitters who don't make enough contact and who under pressure will swing at balls out of the strike zone, like Trevor Story, whose numbers overall look pretty good. But the last time I looked at his averages and at-bats with runners in scoring position, his numbers were terrible. So I'll tell you what, let me try to do that quickly right now, because there's another thing I want to get to with Story here momentarily. But Story has been in a bit of a slump of late. Overall on the season right now, he is batting .272 with a .735 OPS. Not so long ago, the batting average was about 80 points higher, and the OPS was in the 800s. So he's missing everything right now is the point. But with runners in scoring position, you know what Story's batting? 194. And with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, you know what he's batting? .071. He's 1 for 14 with 8 strikeouts. Now, some of Story's home runs have come early in games, so they've meant something. But there's also less pressure in the early innings of a game because you get plenty of time to recover. So, to me, I just think this identifies that Red Sox, it feels to me like they hit bad pitching and they don't hit in the clutch, or they don't hit situationally. That's what it feels like. I'll give you one more on Story. He's hitting .435 against lefties, .231 against righties. Against righties, he has more strikeouts than hits. 29 strikeouts, 21 hits. So just look deeper than those overall numbers. Okay, that's all I'm telling you. Kevin Majori's got your headline. When we come back, the numbers on Rafael Devers, and those aren't pretty either.
4-4.
Two-seam fastball, Madio. Middle, Raffy. Those are the pitches he's been swinging through. Not today. To the moon.
Raffy snapping it 0 for 16 with this.
So again, Rafael Devers had a homer the other day. Heard him say he snapped an 0 for 16. It's an off-speed pitch. Change-up. Might have been a two-seamer. I heard Will Middlebrook say a couple of different things. I never saw a radar gun reading on it. It's either a bad two-seamer or a bad change-up, one or the other. Had that kind of motion to it, sort of, moving away from Devers, but not a lot on it. He crushed it. Tyler Milliken had this over the weekend, and I think this is a problem that's been true with a lot of Red Sox batters, save a few. There aren't a lot of guys in this lineup you'd feel good about right now in a key situation or in a 2-outs run-scoring situation, because I know how I would pitch them. Fastballs, the large majority of them, and up in the strike zone. Jaron Duran, who's hot right now and playing well, but early in the year, fastballs up, he was chasing out of the strike zone, swinging and missing. Devers, which brings us to this, has been missing fastballs all year. So Milliken said this on Friday. I don't think it really changed over the weekend. It got a little bit better. But did you know Rafael Devers, the Red Sox $30 million man, Rafael Devers has seen more fastballs than any hitter in the big leagues this year. Think of that. It used to be, and again, juxtapose that or contrast it with the way the Red Sox want to pitch other lineups. Because Andrew Bailey, the pitching coach, says what? We're not going to throw fastballs because those are the pitches the most damage gets done on. Those are the ones that get hit for extra bases and home runs. So we're going to throw off speed. Sliders, curveballs, changeups, sweepers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll take our chances on that stuff. Even, by the way, when he's got a guy at the top of his rotation in Garrett Crochet who throws 98, 99 miles an hour, which is ridiculous if you ask me, that they don't have him throwing his fastball more than 50% of the time. But again, we digress. As it relates to Devers, Devers is only hitting off speed. Teams are pitching the Red Sox the opposite way. They're coming after them with fastballs, and a guy like Devers can't hit it. So let's hope that this is just an early season thing, but we saw some of it last year with the Astros. There was a series in Houston, if you remember, early in the year, where Houston threw Rafael Devers nothing but fastballs, and he couldn't hit. This year, Devers is batting .216 with 38 strikeouts against fastballs. He has just 24 hits. And for good hitters, I always feel like that's a good metric to look at. Strikeouts compared to the number of hits. Because if you're not making contact, how do you expect to have a decent batting average? 38 strikeouts with 24 hits on fastballs. Now, you want the good news? Mike Trout isn't hitting fastballs right now either. And everybody in the game is throwing in the mid to high 90s. It's max effort, so hitting fastballs is probably harder than it's ever been. Even so, Devers had a little stretch there where he started hitting again. Then he went cold. Now it looks like he might be coming out of it again. But amid all of that, the fastball has been a problem for him, something to keep an eye on. Matt in Situate. Matt, what do you got?
Hey, I just wanted to talk about how decent the Red Sox pitching has been the last couple of starts. Earlier in the season it was pretty bad outside of Crochet. But I thought Bayo pitched okay yesterday. But he's still, isn't he coming back from injury? I can't remember.
He had a sore shoulder, Matt, during camp. So, again, he's just getting going, so you can give him a little bit of latitude. That's fine. I would also tell you, though, that the first inning problems with Bayo go back a long way. So those have been going on for, over a year, maybe two. Anyway, keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, but Buehler, I think last year wasn't he like 1-5 with like a 5.60 ERA, and he's been okay, especially for what I was expecting from him. But what makes me nervous about the pitching is that I don't want Crochet throwing 110 pitches in 5 innings. Because if he blows his arm out, then we are in not good territory. And we have nothing outside of him. I don't think we have anything in the minors. So we need to, I don't like seeing Crochet throw 105, 110 pitches in 5 innings. And I don't think the nerds like it either. And I'm not a nerd, but I kind of agree with the nerds on that one.
Yeah, no. And Matt, you should agree with the nerds on that one. 110 pitches in 5 innings isn't going to get it done for you. It's 22 an inning. I mean, even if you pitch well, this is not going to get you deep into the game. And ideally, you want both. So, look, this is an old number, but I think it still holds. But you want to look for about 15 an inning. That's the goal. 15 an inning will get you through 7. That gets you to 105, and then you check out. That should be the goal, somewhere around there. Now they don't even let guys go over 100. But if you're pitching a good game and, you're striking people out, it's hard to do it in something less than 100, 105 pitches. You're going to average about 15 per inning in the big leagues. It's a good guideline number. So, and I agree, they should not be putting that kind of pressure on Garrett Crochet. Buehler, I would say, since the second start, overall has been pretty good. So his last 4 starts, the team is 4-0. He's won 3 of them. And his ERA is 2.5, 2.6. Batting average against him is 207. He's got 22 strikeouts and 24 and a third. I'd like to see that number go up a little bit. But all things considered, Buehler in the last few games has been pretty good. Not a whole hell of a lot to complain about there. So he has been what he was, or something closer to what he was in the postseason than what he was during the regular season. Now, I would also tell you that keep in mind that during the postseason, when he started to pitch well, he was only going 5 innings. So there certainly could have been some max effort involved there, knowing there was a relief outing in there too. And you can empty the tank a little bit in the postseason because what are you saving it for? Pitching during the course of the regular season is a little different. You got to pace yourself a little bit. You have more starts coming. Ideally, you're going to go every five or 6 days. And in the case of Buehler, he wants to stay healthy on top of it and make sure that he doesn't break down because he wants to hit the free agent market again. So this contract with the Red Sox, you use me, I use you. That's what that is. But I will caution you that lots of guys in their free agent year will put a greater emphasis on staying healthy than they will on pitching their very best. And when I say that, I don't mean that they want to suck. I mean that instead of throwing 96, 97 the whole night, they will settle for a notch or 2 less. And they'll pace themselves a little more, so you might see the ERA be a little higher than it normally would be. I can give you an obvious example, but again, I got to turn back the clock. Pedro Martinez in 2004 was his final year in Boston. It was a contract year. He stayed healthy all year. He wasn't the team's ace. He was their number 2 starter. Schilling became the ace that year, and Pedro's ERA ended up in the mid-3s. Typically, he was in the 2s. Often the low 2s or even the high 1s. But as he aged, his arm weakened, and the health was important, so he kept some gas in the tank. And he made sure he got through the whole season. I will never forget someone saying to me, when I asked whether or not Pedro was healthy, the response I got from someone in the Red Sox organization was, oh, he's healthy. This whole year is about him staying healthy. So just keep that in mind with Buehler. Could be a similar thing. That his goal, more than anything, is to stay healthy. Speaking of which, I think that same thought occurred to someone else over the weekend in Cleveland for the Red Sox. Someone was putting a priority on staying healthy, and I can't entirely say that I blame them. We'll tell you who that is when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
floater. Story racing out. Can't get it off the glove. Here comes the run in to score. And the Guardians take the lead 5-4. Kwan did not hit it hard, to say the least. Story did get leather on it.
So Stephen Kwan special with 2 strikes. He just makes a ton of contact, doesn't swing and miss. Infield in. Trevor Story gets a good jump on this. I'm thinking he's going to lay out and make the play there, and it just ticks off the very end of the webbing of that glove. Would have been a tremendous play to save a run.
Part of me that was like, please don't dive.
I know. I think about that too in those plays after the injury to him last year.
Again, Cleveland won. Decisive play. What a crazy game that was. Red Sox get 3 in the first on a home run by Wilyer Abreu. And Tanner Houck gives up 4 in the bottom half. Tanner Houck is a whole different story. We'll get to him later in the week. I don't know what's going on with that guy, but it is ugly. Not one start yet that even remotely resembles what he was a year ago. Not one. And in the first half of last year, he was dominant. Dominant. Lest we forget he was in the All-Star game. But again, I digress. So this game goes into the 6th. The Red Sox had tied it up by then 4-4. I think the Devers home run had actually tied that game. So here's what happens in the 6th. Bernardino comes in to pitch, hits the leadoff man, puts him on. Angel Martinez singles. That was an infield hit, but it deflected off of Bernardino. So now you got guys at first and second without the ball leaving the infield. The next guy bunts, second and third. Up comes Stephen Kwan. Cora brings the infield in. You get that little blooper that, had Trevor Story been playing in his normal position, is an easy catch. Easy. The ball landed basically on the dirt or just beyond it, but it was basically a semi-line drive in the infield. He was a jam shot that couldn't have been going more than, 40 miles an hour, if that. But on the play, Story lunges. The ball's just out of his reach. He ends up fielding it on a hop and sort of spins and throws toward the plate as he's falling into the outfield, but the run scores. So, again, what you heard was the Red Sox broadcast. This is what it sounded like on the Cleveland broadcast.
1 out, top of the order, Stephen Kwan, left on left. 4-4 game, Red Sox bring the infield in. Bernardino, hands resting just above the belt, delivers. Kwan sends a little floater into shallow left, and it's a base hit off the glove of the shortstop Story. In to scores Wilson. Martinez holds at second. With the infield drawn in, a jam job floater off the bat of Stephen Kwan, and it lands in shallow left, ticking off the glove of the shortstop Story, who was racing out there to try to snag it. And Cleveland's back on top 5-4. Give Kwan a second hit and his 15th RBI. If the infield's not drawn in, that's a routine pop-up. And so much so that you saw the runner at second, Martinez, not even try to go to third.
So again, the runner on second did not advance on the plate, something else they should have mentioned. But the point is that, again, had the infield been back, so that's the first thing. Should the infield have been in? My answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. Because you got to do everything in your power to choke off that run, and I know in this case it worked against you. But the Cleveland bullpen is excellent. The Red Sox hadn't scored since the first inning, and you know what happened in the final 3 innings of the game? The Red Sox struck out 5 times. They got 1 hit. So this gets back to that stat at the beginning of the show, that when the Red Sox hit 10 hits, they're unbeaten. When they don't, they lose. They lose more than the average team would lose. 7-14 in those 21 games. But the play with Story, instinctively, the ball went off his glove and he was lunging. I thought, why didn't he dive? Catch that ball. If he leaves his feet, he probably makes the catch. But then it occurred to me what occurred to Dave O'Brien and Will Middlebrooks. Last year wasn't exactly the same kind of play, but Story was going to his right, dove, landed awkwardly, separated his shoulder, end of his season. It's pretty much how it's gone with Story. So you tell me, worth losing a game in April? First game of a doubleheader because he didn't dive or worth losing story? Now, look, you can't start making every play with the fear or thought that, well, if I get hurt, I'm not going to be able to make it. But I half understand it with Story. Given the amount of time he's missed in the last couple of years. But still, let's watch it. Because as the season goes on, if there are other circumstances like that where he's not laying out for balls, well, then he's afraid. And you can't play the position that way either. Anyway, Joe Murray's here. He's got you for the balance of the night. Kevin Majori's got your headlines. We'll catch you tomorrow. Red Sox open a series tomorrow in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Important series. They all are in the division. Again, Kevin has your headlines. We'll see you then.
From the Town Fair Tire Studios, this is Boston's home for sports.
Holiday 3, good.